Welcome aboard to the Omni-bus to Miscellanea. I'm Cyber and I'll be your overseer today. Before we get started, if you haven't checked it out yet, our new sister show just released, Teddy BBBear Podfix. This new series is hosted by our very own Teddy as she showcases some of her favorite fanfictions. Much like Omnibus, Teddy BBBear Podfix is available on most podcast streaming platforms, including YouTube. Oh, and before I forget, please share us with your friends and family, and please rate us 5 stars on Spotify or the equivalent on whatever platform you're listening to us on. And while you're at it, don't forget we have a Patreon, patreon.com/Project Cyclone. The more support we get, the easier it is for us to keep making fun projects, and the more possible it is to support other aspiring creatives looking to get their talent shared. If you would like to be a part of an episode or any of our other new and upcoming projects, feel free to contact us at projectcyclone.com and show us what you can do. That's PROJECTPSYCLONE.com, projectcyclone.com. With all that being said, this episode is a double feature. Sit back, relax, and enjoy our first stop. What happens when you're tired of pulling your punches? What if the foe finally falls? Find all that and more in Sea Bandicoot 2817's Everything Screams When It Dies.
He told me once, everything screams when it dies. For what, I don't know. Perhaps it's fear or anger, or one last desperate attempt to remind the world of its existence before it's gone. I'm here. I existed. Remember me. But this death was silent. No screaming. No dramatic monologue as the villain is finally brought to his knees. No cries for help or pleading for another chance. Just tears and silence. And an understanding that this was the end, and though I wasn't the one dying, I was the one unwilling to accept it. Though I suppose he didn't have much of a choice. What can I do when there is no fight left, and death is standing over me, other than take his hand and follow him home? I said nothing as I held him in my arms. A long silence fell between us. We didn't speak, only his labored breathing, but his eyes said a million things. I teared up. I couldn't help it. Bittersweet? Maybe. I won. After all these years, I won. We were enemies, but I knew him so well. Almost like we could have been friends if things had gone a little differently somewhere along the way. Almost. I broke the silence. I never thought I'd grieve for you. He still didn't speak. It seemed he wanted to, but his breath wouldn't allow it. Unfortunately, X-ray vision can't read minds, but it can see wounds, even those under the surface. I looked through his chest, and next to broken ribs and collapsed lungs, I could see a heart beating bitterly at the thought of death. But softly, at the thought of rest. I spoke again with shaky breath, trying my hardest not to sob as tears began to stain my cheeks. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. His pain-labored face softened into a grin. Or maybe a smirk, maybe a little of both, but still no words crossed his lips. He looked deep into my eyes with an understanding, as if to say, "Don't be. It was always supposed to end this way." "I could have saved you. I should have saved you." He lifted his hand up to my cheek, his face softening even more into sympathy. He closed his eyes tight. A tear fell from the corner as his hand wiped mine from my chin. His eyes said what we both already knew. It was always too late for that. We stared into each other's eyes, sharing tears until his hand fell from my cheek and his heart fell asleep. I lost my strength then, letting myself cry like I hadn't since I was a child. I sobbed for my enemy who was also once a child, who knew love and joy and loss and pain. My enemy who was just like me. I wept for what felt like hours, first at the grief, then at the irony. Both of us possessed power beyond understanding. I can see through walls, lift entire buildings with one hand, and punch through solid steel. He could fly, keeping up with even the fastest jets. He could manipulate the electrons of non-organic materials and change one atom to another at will. Yet there he lay dead in my arms. And there I sat, weak, unable to move, and submerged in feelings I didn't fully understand. How absurd. How backwards it all seemed. All the power in the world, yet still bound by death. How human. And who was I in all of this? The hero? That's what they called me. And they called him a villain. But there, in that moment, there were no heroes or villains. No good guys and bad guys. No moral high ground. Just two men who fought because it's all we knew how to do. It was all we'd ever known. Before, we fought because we had to. It was a necessity. It was survival. But now I didn't know what it's for. With his body in my arms, and my bones on fire, I screamed. I screamed as loud as my lungs could scream. I screamed until my throat tasted like blood, and my vocal cords shredded. I don't know why or where it was directed, but I screamed. I only knew two things in that moment. I wasn't the hero anymore. I was done fighting. And everything screams when it dies.
Welcome back. After going from how a cape and mask can cloud one's humanity, what about the effects of a robotic parasite? Written by Declan Zielinski, connected with her.
It was a beautiful morning as the sun nudged me awake. I shifted out of my bed to head downstairs to see her, where she always has been. As I gazed upon her eternal and universal beauty, like I do every morning, I felt something squirming
writhing inside me.
I saw her face. It was full of love and remorse. I woke up in a room unfamiliar to me. I felt open but claustrophobic, with almost as many wires around me as were inside of me. Then I saw her eyes fixated on me, and only me. The sight of her washed away almost all the pain until they started growing. I could tell she felt sad in a way that I didn't understand. The wires inside of me, they grew like a nicely watered plant and wrapped around my organs like a carnivorous vine. The wires wrapped around my heart, choking and squeezing until it was finally still. My face would have been a different color if it were not already dark from the wires under my skin. How could I do this to myself? How could I control this? Can I? The question subsided every time I saw her looming over me. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I saw her. I knew it was okay. Her emotions were powerful, much more than mine. How? I remember. From before. Every time we would touch, it would be a new, exciting experience. Every day. Every new, wondrous day was a new day to experience her. I knew the wires were there. I somehow always knew. I knew this day would come. Sometimes I would get a taste of the mild, numbing pain to test myself. But I knew my love wasn't pure enough then. I knew it would be okay though, because she was watching. My love reached a peak that no wire nor pain could touch. She looked at me. I looked back, but without my eyes. At that moment, all stopped. The slithering and squeezing and piercing, and even the pain stopped. All that was left was us. I realized at that moment that she was touching me on my leg. I saw a single wire burrow into her. I never felt such joy. That wonderful moment was only a moment because, after the calm, the wires erupted. My retinas were pierced, and my skin broke with wires escaping from anywhere they could find or make. I was open. She still loved me. I knew it. The pain was gone. The screams, no more. I knew she was watching, embracing me. She leaned down and whispered something I could never hope to understand, but I knew exactly what she said. We are one. I will always be happy. What is there to be sad about? I have all I could ever want. All I have are the wires, 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 wires. And now, only her.
Everything Screams When It Dies was written by C_Bandicoot_2817. You can find the link to the original work down below. The narrator was played by Brendan Edward Kennedy. Brendan can be found at SoundCloud at Gumption Voiceovers, Casting Call Club at Gumption VO, and his acting website at bekennedy.net. That's BEKENNEDY.net. Connected with her was written by Declan Zielinski. Declan can be found at sites.google.com/Declan Zielinski's portfolio. That's DECLANZIELINSKIS portfolio. This episode was edited and composed by Cy Nelson, who can be found on Reddit at Cy_Cyclone and Instagram at Cyber_Cyclone. The producers for this episode were Cy Nelson and Teddy BBBear, who can be found on Instagram at TDY_BBBear. All links and credits can be found in the description. As for our bus, you can always find a stop on the corner between somewhere and nowhere. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay cozy. We hope to see you soon.